interact with everyone, and make sure you select all panelists and attendees in while posting the message in the chat box.
Sampath, I'm there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in the second workshop of Transport for All Digital Innovation Challenge. This is Faraz Ahmed, Senior Associate at ITDP India Program. Before we begin, I would like to thank everyone who participated in the challenge. We today have senior officials from Smart City Mission, officials from participating cities, non-for-profit organization, and academic institute partners who have joined for the workshop today. So a quick update on what we are going to discuss today. We'll be starting with an update on where we are in the current challenge, and we'll have an introductory address by Mr. Kunal Kumar, Joint Secretary and Mission Director, Smart City Mission. Also, there is a special address by Mr. Ravi Prakash, Director, Urban Transport, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. We'll have a presentation on guiding cities how to effectively conduct in-person surveys, which will be taken up by Shreya Gadepalli, Director, ITTP South Asia, followed by an interesting and engaging panel discussion with cities and technical expert of the matter. So I would like to thank again everyone for their with us, and we'll also have a closing remark by Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director, Smart City Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So I'd quickly like to take you to the updates where we are on the challenge so far. So out of 130 cities who have participated in the Transport for All challenge, 65 cities have already formed the Transport for All task force with a diverse multiple stakeholders, including government agencies, civil societies, academic institute, and representation from IPT union as well. Here's a quick snapshot of where cities are in the Transport for All task force. 184 non-government organizations have also participated in the challenge to support 119 cities that include civil societies, research and academic institute, and educational institute as well. So after the first workshop, many cities have also started the kickoff meeting with their task force member to brainstorm and to decide the next way and the challenge, how they can proceed ahead with the challenge. So here is a quick snapshot of how the cities have rolled out the citizen survey. As of now, 19 cities have rolled out the in-person survey, and it has been widely covered in the print media and other social media platforms as well. That too in the vernacular language as well. So I would now like to invite Mr. Kunal Kumar, sir, for the introductory remark and share his thoughts on the challenge. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Faraz, and a very good afternoon to all the participants on this call. This probably is the first workshop. Am I right?
Yes. This is the second workshop. We had that's right.
It's the second workshop, but I think now first one was more on introduction, and now we've actually moved on with a lot of things in the cities. And today is not only a time for taking stock of what we've already done, but also to give shape to the future of this program. I am very happy to have my colleague from the Urban Transport Division of the Ministry, along with my director Rahul Kapoor, also on this call. Ravi Prakash is there. So, of course, this is in one way forming a transport task force within the ministry itself is essential, because we want similar activities to also happen in an integrated fashion at the state level and the city level. So, why the challenge? All of us are aware of the beautiful statement of this the mayor of what is that city? Bogota, right?
Bogota.
Bogota.
Enrique Peñalosa.
Enrique Peñalosa, yeah. So he said the better cities are not those where the rich, the poor travel by cars, but where the rich travel by public transport. I think that is a guiding statement in some senses, in very practical ways for this challenge. Because we've seen what is happening to our cities today. And you look at the density of cars we have in India. If you see, probably if my data is slightly wrong, but will do, I think, for this conference, I think US 110 cars per 100 people. China has around 35 cars per 100 people, and we have around 10 to 12 cars per 100 people. But by the way it is growing, I think maybe it's gone slightly ahead, but that's kind of ratio. And even if that ratio is giving you 2 to 3, 4 hours of traffic jams in your cities, imagine the state of affairs when you actually reach the state where China is now, and US is now. Probably a smart cities mission like ours, the best technology we would be searching for is how to sleep on roads in your cars, because that's essentially where you will be stuck forever in our cities. Clearly that is not the future we should look for. Having said that, public transport was always a tough area of work. I think one reason has been that there is fragmented governance around public transport in our cities. Who will bell the cat? It's not my lookout. It's not his lookout. It's not her lookout. This organization is only supposed to do licensing. That organization is supposed to do ticket rates decisions. Other organization is supposed to run the buses. A fourth organization is supposed to manage the traffic and stuff like that. One very big impediment, which is why under this challenge we thought of this transport task force, which is to bring together all fragmented units of city governance towards a common cause, which is so well elucidated in the statement that I just narrated from the Bogota mayor. The second thing, of course, is finance and lack of resources, prioritization of resources, rather, as I put it, towards public transport, because the fancy that every corporator or every politician has is to widen roads and build flyovers and provide for more parking lots and not actually make money out of it, because you don't really commercially run these parking lots. You don't put that money separately into an account which funds something more sustainable in the city. So clearly it's management of resources, generation of resources, and prioritization of resources for public transport which lacks. Now these were traditional, and there are many other things we can go on in detail, but these originally were already there, and now we've suddenly been hit by another storm, which is called the COVID pandemic. And by the nature of the storm itself, it requires social distancing. It requires people to travel in more isolated ways, which is where public transport probably got affected the most. So in a situation where where revenue generation is not possible, where ticketing itself cannot support the transport facility, because clearly it has to be subsidized to a certain extent. Only then it becomes attractive for all classes of people, for everyone to use it. Also, you have to maintain its quality and everything, so it's conflicting things. And in such a tough scenario, here you have a situation where your ridership will go down. How do you sustain public transport in such times? It's almost like death knell, and sort of aggravates an already existing crisis situation. So all of us on this call, I hope, understand that we do not have a future without public transport in our cities. Walkability, cyclability, public transport. This is the only way we can have a future which is sustainable, where our children can breathe good air, where all of us can think of walking and going to cities in safe and secure manner, where the elderly and the children can find, convenience in going around the city, where women feel secure, and everybody is able to reach, their destinations in a comfortable way, which is why, sometimes I also, in a very simple way, would call public transport as the equivalent of the mobile in the telecom world. Uh, you know, when we think of a mobile, how I equate the two things are, see, what we call affordable excellence, something which is affordable yet very excellent. And a mobile phone is such a device that the richest of the richest have it, and the poorest of the poor also have one, and they can use, both the strata of people can use it conveniently to reach out to their businesses, to reach out to their suppliers, to their home, to their family, to their friends. And it cuts across all income divisions. It's available to all. Exactly in that same nature, can public transport become available to all in an affordable and excellent manner, is the equivalence I'm trying to draw from the world of telecom and public mobile transport to the world of transport and public transport. So telecom equivalent to transport, and public transport equal to the mobile phone, which democratizes in a way that the ability of people to transport themselves, to move from one place to another in the city. This will require the same amount of innovation that was needed for the mobile phone to come to this stage of evolution. First time I saw the mobile phone was in 1999 when I was at SDM, first posting, and my tehsildar showed some very wacky equipment in his hand. He was, said, "Sir, you want to use this?" It was 16 rupees a call per minute. And from that time on, today we have come to a state where all the telecom operators are crying for money. It's like nothing. It's almost free. Everybody is using. In fact, funnily, I used to give this example in Pune when I was a municipal commissioner, that houses don't have toilets but have 4 mobile phones. So what created this innovation from a zero telecom situation where you actually had to wait for months to get a telephone, to come to a situation where phone has become redundant? It's almost nothing. Some operators give you for free. So the same innovation is needed in this field. It is not going to happen in business as usual manner. Most of us think, by writing some documents, by building some programs, doing some tenders, we'll be able to solve this. This requires the same innovation which a Reliance could do behind Reliance Jio, which a telecom sector saw in the form of mobile phones, and so many other sectors have seen in the form of amazing solutions that have come out. Look at what Uber did. Look at what Zomato is doing today. I mean, it was listed today. These are the ways in which we have to solve public transport. For it to become so ubiquitous, just like the way the mobile phone has reached the hands of everyone, public transport should be available to everyone at 10 minutes distance. Time distance of 10 minutes. In every 10 minutes, I should be able to access a public transport. If you're able to come to that state, then we will have to solve the problem of the future of our cities. It's not the problem of transport. It's actually the problem of a future of our cities, to have a good future for health, for environment, for transport, for safety, for security. Everything depends on this one thing. It's not for any reason. It's called the lifeline of the city. So friends and colleagues, all of you on this call, this challenge is for innovators in this fraternity, in our community, in the Indian landscape, to solve for how do we make public transport the most preferred mode of transport through the use of innovation. How do we get it to reach everyone? How does it become accessible to everyone in the city? How does it become not only accessible, but accessible with good quality? And how do we actually maintain sustainability of operations? How can we use innovation and digital technologies and other ways of making this possible? This is the challenge for, and this is one of the most important things we should all be thinking of as a collective, which is why I thank all my partners, which is ITDP, World Bank, and others who are working with us, my entire team in Delhi, and all the cities. It's such a heartening thing to know that, about More than 140 NGOs and academic institutions are ready to put their might behind this challenge. I think more than 130 cities have registered, close to about 70 cities have already formed the task force. Now, let us not think of these as tick marks. These are just forms. Now the functions have to be performed. The task force has to really get behind the thought of how to make sustainable transport the future of the city. How do we actually go ahead and ensure that all the partnerships we are developing are clearly able to take us on that path, and we are able to leverage the strengths of our partners. There is a saying that the whole has to be greater than the sum of its parts. So if there are 5 people coming together, the entity that emerges should be having the capability of more than just 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So 2 plus 2 has to become 22. How do we leverage the strengths of our partners? How do we leverage the strength of our ecosystem to solve this challenge for the future? So I'll stop here. Maybe have had enough of monologue. I'm very excited with this new work that we have taken on. It's a challenge that we'll all have to work together to solve. And my best wishes for today's workshop and all the future work that all of us are going to do together on this challenge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for an encouraging word. And definitely it is imperative for us to make public transport more affordable and uplift the image on that. So with that, I would like to now invite Mr. Ravi Prakash, sir, for a special address and share his thoughts on how we can converge this Transport for All digital challenge could be converged with the urban transport and how we can, what the future beholds. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Kunal, sir. I am Ravi Prakash. I am Director in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, after Urban Transport Division. So, sir has wonderfully, expressed his thought about what is going to be the future of the cities and how much urban transport, this mobility, public transportation is going to play a role in that. So, just for introduction, realizing the rapidly growing problems of urban transport, Government of India, OHUA, has approved the National Urban Transport Policy in April 2006. The policy was one of the first structured initiatives that focused on moving people and not the vehicle, and stressed on incorporating urban transportation as an important component of urban development at the planning stage itself, rather than as a consequential requirement. The policy set the tone for countering the mobility problems of big cities, aspirational cities, recommending that they be addressed through demand management and investment in public transport systems. Given the far-reaching effects that transportation has on energy consumption and carbon emission, sustainable public transport system will be a key building block for future thriving cities. In this background, Transport for All Challenge is a great initiative launched by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs to bring large-scale transformative change in public transportation. These challenges can come up with ideas and solutions aiming at management, efficiency, and safety of public transport system. It may include leveraging new and emerging technologies to make moving around a city more convenient, more cost-effective, both for the city as well as citizen, and safer. Smart technologies can augment areas like fleet management, ticketing, security surveillance, traffic management, and real-time passenger information. Our train, buses, and IPTs have taken a big hit since the COVID-19 pandemic. So this challenge has come at the right time to revive public transportation and make it safer for our citizens again. We must seize this historically unique opportunity to transform public transportation and shape the future of our cities. Running effective public transport in any city is a collective and collaborative effort of various stakeholders, and surely it's not a one-man show. It is impossible to run this challenge without the support of multiple agencies. Therefore, I would like to request all municipal corporations, state transport undertakings, RTOs, metros, and other stakeholders holders to participate in the Transport for All challenge and become an active member of the Transport for All Task Force (TTF) formed by the cities. And finally, we must realize that only through joint and collaborative effort we can transform our public transport system. So, with these words, I welcome you all, and I hope that this challenge throws up real solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot for stressing on the need for having a joint and collaborative venture to take up this task by itself. It's definitely a no man's. It's not a one man's job, but it is a collaboration that would be seeing the fruit of it. So with that, before we proceed to the next session, I would like to address a few housekeeping rules for the webinar we are having today. Please, you can use the chat box to interact with the panelists and attendees throughout the session. Please make sure you select to all panelists and attendees while you post any messages. You can use the question and answer box to ask any question to the panelist over here, and we would try to answer as many as we can. You can also upvote the questions if you want it to be answered. So with this, I would like to move into the next session, which is a short presentation on how city can effectively conduct in-person survey. The session would be taken up by Shreya Gadipalli, Director, South Asia ITDP. Shreya, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Faraz, and thanks a lot, Mr. Kunal Kumar and Mr. Ravi Prakash, for your words. The first step in this Transport for All challenge was for cities to capture the voices of citizens, to understand from citizens what are the problems they are facing. And we've heard from many cities that they are facing challenges, and therefore we wanted to find out what is the status. How many of you are facing problems with rolling out citizen surveys? There's a poll out there that you can see. I request everybody who's there. We have about 200 people on the session today. Request all of you to answer this question so that gives us a better sense of where you stand in terms of rolling out the citizen surveys. Are you facing a problem with rolling out the citizen survey? So we have about 50 people who've answered. We'll wait for just a little bit. We have nearly 200 participants, so I'm sure the rest of you could also answer wherever you are. So please answer the question. We'll wait for one more minute before we close the poll and then move on to the next section. Okay, with that, I'd like to call the poll to an end. It looks like we have nearly half the members here who are facing problems with rolling out citizen surveys. This is exactly what we had seen also when we had heard from you. And therefore, this session is essentially about how can we simplify this process for you so that you could run citizen surveys well. So let me jump right into this session, a small little presentation first on how to run the citizen surveys. And then thereafter, we would have a very interesting panel discussion with two cities, Guntur and Surat. And we also will have with us Mr. Nagendra Reddy, who's from a surveying agency, to share also his own insights of what he's learned over many years of conducting surveys. So over to the presentation. So today's session is about capturing voices of citizens through surveys. And we will soon be sharing with you a guidance document that you can use, but we will run through all of those in today's session too. So the first thing is, how many surveys do you need? a lot of cities have this question of saying, how could we conduct the surveys? How many surveyors do we really need to conduct the survey? And after having consulted multiple cities, after having done beta tests of this survey ourselves, we found out that with just 10 surveyors, you can actually complete the survey in 10 days. So it doesn't take a very long time. It doesn't take a big army of surveyors. With just 10 surveyors, you can actually do it. And how? Essentially, each surveyor can easily do around 5 respondents per hour, resulting in about 30 respondents per day. So you get 30 survey results per day. And if you have 10 surveyors in 10 days, you can easily do 3,000 samples. And that's exactly what we've asked you to do, right? 3,000 samples might seem like a lot, but in reality, it's not that much. And this is the right amount. We've done a statistical check on how many samples do you need to get a strong result. And 3,000 samples is what we've realized. And even if you pay each surveyor about 500 rupees per day, which is probably a fair amount to pay to a surveyor, because she or he is actually going out and doing this survey and accounting for other costs also, the survey should cost less than 1 lakh. So if you just count 10 surveyors for 10 days, it should actually cost only 50,000, but accounting for other expenses, it should cost you less than 1 lakh. Because we've also heard that some cities have come back and said, oh, we don't know how much it's going to cost. Some people are telling us it might cost us 5 lakh rupees, but naturally, it shouldn't cost you that much money to conduct it. Now, how do you set up the survey? The first step is identifying survey supervisors. These are people probably who are there on your own team, or maybe you could bring somebody on with the help of your partners within CSOs, NGOs, and academic institutions. But identify 2 survey supervisors, because these 2 people are going to be the managers of the survey. They will monitor how to roll out the survey. Next step, onboard surveyors and volunteers, as the case might be, and train them to effectively conduct the survey. So you need to run them through what they need to do in terms of going out and conducting the survey form. They need to understand the survey form and how they're going to conduct this with citizens. The third step, and before I go further, I'd like to highlight here that cities can certainly seek support from the academic institutes and NGOs who've all signed up to support you. So please reach out to them and make sure that they're helping you, all these other organizations who've signed up to support you. Now, the next step is that the supervisors, the 2 supervisors that you have gotten, they would allocate daily targets to each surveyor. They'll tell them where to go and how many survey responses to get. We'll get into that in a little bit in this presentation itself, but that's the next step. Now, in terms of the surveyors themselves, each surveyor needs a unique code. So make sure that you start the surveyor ID from 101. Don't start from 1, start from at least 101. And then give each of them a surveyor code. Sometimes some surveyors who've started may not continue. So you might have new surveyors coming in. So you'll have to give them a new unique code and maintain a list of all these surveyors that you're using. The next step is you're going to share the survey link with them and train them on how to conduct the surveys. And the next step, of course, is to assign them survey locations and daily targets to these surveyors to say, okay, you're going to go to this location and find these kinds of respondents to do the survey. Now, please ensure, and this is a request to everybody, please ensure that everybody follows COVID safety measures. It's important for both the surveyors as well as citizens that COVID safety measures are ensured, which is that you need to make sure that at all times you're wearing a mask. You need to have, sanitize your hands or wash your hands to make sure that you're not potentially passing this on. And also request the respondents whom you're interviewing to wear a mask at all times so that it maintains your own safety. Now, who do these surveyors go and survey? Like we had said in the last session, you want to make sure that you get a good broad spectrum of all kinds of people, people from low-income households, people from middle-income households, as well as people from high-income households. Now, also make sure that you get an equal number of responses from men and women in these households and a good spectrum of the age of the respondents. So do not just get responses from men who are young but instead you need to get them from men and women who are of different ages and are of different incomes, right? And you need to collect at least 1,000 samples from each of the 3 income categories. So 500 men, 500 women from low income, 500 men and women from middle, and 500 men and 500 women from high income households. Now, for quickly identifying what we mean by low income, middle income, and high income households, here are some pictures, just to give you a sense of what kind of a household would you enter to find potentially a low income respondent. So you have these pictures, these are good identifiers, and you can share them with your surveyors. So use this presentation to train your surveyors. So these are potentially what a low income household might look like. Similarly, this is what middle income households might look like, right? They're not rich, but they're not very poor either. And third are high income households. You very clearly know what these higher income households are. And make sure that you're getting responses from all these typologies of incomes, of houses, and then hence incomes. Now, how do you allocate these in the city? Look at your own map, identify where you might get low income, middle income, and high income households. The first thing that a surveyor does is each day allocates a certain target to each surveyor. So the surveyor is told you need to go to this particular area and get 30 responses and make sure that you're getting an equal number of men and women from this set, right? So they would identify, say, 3 locations in the city center, a low income household, a middle income, a low income area, a middle income area, and a high income area of the city, send them, allocate each surveyor to each of these locations. Similarly, don't do all of them only in the city core. You need to get them in the city periphery also. So get a good set, a spread of the responses that you're getting in the city, right? The next step is that at the end of the day, you need to check what you have gotten, right? Before allocating the target for the next day, check the data that you have to ensure that the target is being met. You're moving towards your goal of getting 1,000 each of samples for each of the income categories. And then you would repeat this process. So each day you would allocate. At the end of the day, you will check whether you're meeting your target or not. And based on that, you would give a fresh set of target to your surveyors. Now, as far as the surveyors are concerned, the surveyor will first read out the survey description to a citizen and ask a citizen, are you willing to participate? And this is a survey that is being done by us, the city, and we really like to improve the public transport for you. Would you be willing to tell us what your experience is so that we could make solutions for you? Next, they would tick that they're doing this as an in-person survey interview by a surveyor. The surveyor will fill her or his code and continue with the entire questionnaire and submit the response at the end of it. And then repeat this process for every new respondent. Now, supervisors at the end of the day will export the responses as a spreadsheet. We will be giving you a thorough guide to go through early next week. But just to give you a quick sense of what you will do, you will export the responses as a spreadsheet from the form, the Google form that you have. Use our guide to detect bogus responses. Sometimes, we've noticed that surveyors, some surveyors, you might get not very good surveyors, and they might be just filling in bogus responses. And we are going to give you a guide and a template, a spreadsheet template, where you can directly fill in the data that you've gotten from the spreadsheet to detect bogus responses. If you get those bogus responses, please delete those responses because they are fake. If you put garbage in, you will get garbage out. If you get poor quality data, you will not be able to make any kind of meaningful assessment. So ensure that you not only delete these responses, but find a replacement for the surveyor, because there is no place for a surveyor without integrity. You want to have people that you can trust, data that you can trust to be able to make decisions. Now, the survey inputs the final clean data, which is after removing the bogus inputs, and checks. We will also be giving you a template to auto-generate charts to find out where do you stand, how many men and women have you gotten, how many low income, middle income, high income responses have you gotten, to be able to assign the next day's targets to the surveyors. And finally, you compare this with the overall target and keep setting the fresh target every day. With this, I'm coming towards the end of this session, this presentation. Please make sure that you reach out to resident welfare associations and such so that they can actually fill in the survey. Use FM radio and local print media, especially vernacular media, local language, to make sure that you're reaching out to all the people to get them to take the survey. And finally, also use social media. While social media might not reach everybody, and that's why you should have a mix of both social media as well as other forms of media, such as radio and print, to reach out to various sections of the society, to make sure that citizens understand this exercise, they are excited about what you're trying to do, and give their full support and input so that you can make the problem statements and create solutions for them. So take all precautions to protect the surveyors from COVID. Do not conduct the surveys on paper. Instruct the surveyors to only use mobiles and tablets with internet for conducting the in-person survey. Capture photos and videos of the survey that you're doing, and please share it with us, and also share it with others on the WhatsApp group so that you know that you're creating momentum. And finally, share the survey with our team, the Transport4All team, by adding us, which is the contact at Transport4All, as a collaborator in the form that you're using. So with that, I come to an end to this session. We will soon have 2 other surveys after you're done with the citizen survey, one with informal public transport operators, as well as consultations that you will hold with them to find out their concerns, as well as bus operator survey and consultations with the local city bus operators and the drivers and conductors, the staff who work there, to understand also their concerns so that you could develop a holistic understanding of the problem and then develop the solutions for them. Again, I would say that cities have already made fantastic start. 19 of the cities have already made some headway into conducting these surveys. Thank you for starting this. And we will soon see all the other cities also starting the surveys. So wish you all the best for starting these surveys. We will now have a panel discussion with 3 experts, 3 people, 2 city representatives, Ms. Himabindu from Guntur Municipal Corporation. She's a deputy city planner. Mr. Rajesh Pandya, who many of you know, he's an advisor to the Surat Municipal Corporation. He retired as a deputy municipal commissioner. And Mr. Nagendra Reddy, he's from a surveying company called VTrack. But before we go there, I'd like to open for question and answers, and answer if you have any questions about what I just now presented, or any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you for that insightful presentation, and for sharing how city can conduct an effective in-person survey. There are a few questions lined up from the conversation, from the presentation we have. Like, first one is, what is the role an individual sees in this challenge, how they can contribute as an individual in Transport4All digital, Transport4All challenge?
Sure. So at the very least, every individual can take the survey itself, right? So this survey is available online, and so please encourage everybody that you know to take this survey so that their voice is heard. Next, if you have certain specific skills, that skill might be with data analysis, that skill might be just documenting results, or you might be willing to be a volunteer to do the survey on behalf of the city. Please reach out to your city's nodal officer so that they can take your help to do the survey successfully. Or you might have other skills like communicating this and creating effective graphics to put it out on social media. So whatever skills that you might have, think how you can be of service to your city and to your citizens, and do whatever you can.
Sure. Thanks on responding in that. So one other question we also came across in the last workshop as well, and it is coming back again, is on the funding of this entire survey thing. Like you briefly mentioned, it should cost less than ₹1 lakh for a city to fund this. So would you like to have some thoughts on that? How an non-SCM city could fund those, and an SCM city can fund those?
Sure, sure. We would have actually, today we have two cities, Guntur, which is a non-SCM city, and Surat, which is an SCM city. So it gives you a good sense of what two cities of different sizes, but also two different categories are doing in terms of getting surveys on board, getting the supervisor on board, and conducting these surveys. So I'll leave that question to them. But I'm sure that 1 lakh rupees, and like I said, the survey should only cost you between 50,000 to 1 lakh rupees, is not that big a sum for you to be able to get the necessary data to make substantial improvements to the public transport that you have in the city. So all the smart cities can use the funding which is available through the mission to you. And for even other cities, maybe consider using some funding that you might have from Amrit or from one of the other sources. But again, it's not a very large sum of money. And Guntur and other cities, which are non-SCM cities, are already showing how they're utilizing their existing schemes to be able to conduct the survey. And similarly, Surat has reached out to many local academic institutions to reach out, and we'll speak to them about how they are pursuing the survey. So there are various means of doing it. And I really hope that this small amount of money doesn't become an obstacle for you to conduct this very important survey.
Sure. Thanks on that as well. We have another question related to survey methodology itself. So there is a question, and it asks, okay, should we conduct a survey at a household level? If so, should we interview every individual, or how should we go about it? Any thoughts on that?
So you could do the survey at a household level, because then you would get various kinds of respondents. Like you would get men and women, you would get people of different ages. So it's probably a good idea for you to do this at a household level. But make sure that you are getting a good spread. Like I said, you need to identify households of different income categories in the city, and surveyors need to be told exactly what it means to go to a household of a certain income category and interview them, and ensure that your targets are being met. You want a good spread of the 3,000 responses that you're getting, of different income categories, of different genders, of different age.
Sure, thanks on that as well. And one last question, maybe we can take considering the time we are on. So it is about, can the city add a question if they want to in the survey form? I think
yes. So cities, some cities have reached out to us. You can certainly add a question towards the end of the survey. Please reach out to us regarding the addition of questions. But humble request to all of you, please do not change the questionnaire otherwise that we have given to you. The questions have been arrived at after much consultation with many experts and others, and cities itself and many citizens. We've done 3 rounds of beta testing using this survey form. So please do not change the existing questions, the order of them, and even the options within them, because we'd be able to then easily compare responses in different cities. Also, we would be able to give you the templates which you can use for data analysis more easily. If you change the questions, then you might not be able to use that support that we're giving, nor be able to get the kind of assistance that we're giving to you. So please do not change anything that's there, but you can add 1 or 2 questions towards the end.
Sure. And I think Pandya sir also would like to make a point to this questions. Over to you, Pandya sir, for if you want to respond to this particular question, sir.
No, this was the same thing that I wanted to say. I think Shreya has explained it well.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right. And anything from you, Mr. Kunal Kumar or Mr. Rahul Kapoor, please do add if you have any suggestions.
Not right now.
I'll just probably, Shreya mentioned that, I was talking of how strongly this sector needs innovation. And sometimes it is such an esoteric word that we forget that innovation starts basically from problem sourcing. And the better you understand the problem, the chances that you can innovate to create a product which really solves it magnifies. And so this survey is intended to help us some of us may feel that, well, we know what the problems are. But from my own experience of having worked in cities for more than about 8 years, I would still struggle to really pinpoint the pain problem and real problem, because sometimes, just like we would think that fever is the problem, but the problem is an underlying infection. Similarly, we see traffic congestion as the problem, but more often than not, traffic congestion is just a symptom of a bigger problem. And therefore, talking to cities, talking to stakeholders is so important, which is why the survey is not to be looked at as a routine exercise. It is an exercise in exploration. It is an exercise in deep diving into finding the real problems, the real infections, which lead to worsening traffic situation, transport situation in our cities. So, and this is the bedrock of innovation. If you don't get the survey right, if you don't get problem diagnosis right, we will never be able to arrive at the solution which solves the problem. So I'll stop at that, and I would request all the cities that don't look at this as a, where to get the money and all that stuff. We do so many things in our municipal corporations. I think the amount of money that is required here is not much. And if you tie up with local partner organizations and all, you can still create even, maybe a public-private way of doing this also. But budget-wise also, it doesn't take much. Please keep the objective in mind, and try to figure out a way of doing things instead of getting stuck at small issues. So that is my reflection on the presentation you made.
Thank you. So with that, as in we'll move to the panel discussion with the 3 cities that we have, 2 cities and the expert that we have. But before that, a question to you. After this presentation, are you now clear about how to roll the citizen survey? Seems like the presentation was quite clear and you were able to understand how to run the citizen survey. A few of you might still have some questions. I see that about 3%, 4% of you have some questions. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. Also reach out to your own peers who are probably a little ahead in the process. This whole exercise is not just a competition with your peers, but it's also an opportunity for you to learn from your peers, learn from each other, for all of us to succeed. So, and that's precisely why we have this next session, a peer-to-peer learning session with Surat, with Guntur, and with VTrack. So now I'd like to invite Rajesh Pandya from Surat, Ms. Himabindu from Guntur, and Mr. Reddy from VTrack onto the panel discussion. Welcome to all of you. Maybe I'll start first with Surat. And Mr. Pandya, this is the 3rd challenge that you're anchoring. You also be a key part of the Cycles for Change challenge, as well as the Streets for People challenge. Thank you very much to you and to Surat for being such a big champion of walking, cycling, and public transport. You, from what I understand, you have made a very strong attempt to make this a participatory process. So not only are you making all the efforts possible to have a solid citizen survey, but you're doing that through a series of consultations initially with local NGOs and academic institutions. Maybe you could share with us how you went about doing this process and what have you learned from it?
Thank you, Shreya. Please excuse me if I take some time. And first of all, I'd like to thank Kunal Kumar sir and Rahul sir for every time giving us encouragement for all the projects, and especially also Ravi Prakash sir for giving a very good presentation. Shreya, you are taking these 3 as 3 different challenges. But as a city administrator, for me, it is a one challenge, one project, one in another. We cannot think of cycling without walking or walking without transportation. So we can say we started with a small piece of cycling, then we integrated it with the Street for People challenge, Now we are thinking the holistically for the transportation challenge, and we will always have to move together all these three challenges. Yes, in time frame we can go suppose cycling is first and we are following it, so we cannot move outside. And as some of the cities were pointing about of the problem of finance, so it is with us technocrats or bureaucrats or the who are very much with the decision making authorities. It is for us to convince them that this budget is required and why is this budget required, and how can we convince them when we can explain the benefits of this output of this. A very small example, the number of deaths by road accident is very less than number of deaths by corona. We are spending millions and billions of rupees because we have been able to convince the authorities that yes, we need to spend more. So this amount, whatever is available, is not a very big amount. So we will not enter in discussion much about the amount, but we don't need to spend this also if we have a proper participatory approach. And for that, what we have done, we have a number of institutes, but we have tried to shortlist the academic institutes which are much into this, like the academic institutes who are doing PG courses in planning, urban planning, transportation planning, and engineering related. So they are very much conversant with this. They are very much, so a person who goes to survey, first of all, he should know what he is doing, why he is doing. Only then he will be able to get out quality output for us. Otherwise, it will be just like some poor quality survey. So to have a good quality survey, we need good surveyors who have got a bit understanding, enthusiasm, and knowledge for this. So what we have done, we have contacted these colleges. And as we also know, these students, maybe PG, UG, whatever level they have some projects. They have to do survey is a basic study of all the architects, engineers, and such institutes. So it is a part of their curriculum for them. It is a part of their project. It is a part of their tutorial. So they are very much enthusiastic about this. And when they know that their survey and the results will be reflected on the ground, so they are getting a good background. So we have contacted their faculty members. They have been appointed as the nodal officers or the licensing officers, and they are linking with the students or the other members for them. That is how we are going to do. And as of the sir, as Kunal Kumar sir was doing, that the problem identification is a very important, and quantification of the problem. I'll agree with, I have wholly agree with Kunal Kumar sir that problem identification, everyone is not very difficult because traffic is everyone's cup of tea now. But a problem that had been properly identified is half solved. So let us quantify, and the survey is the only method where we will be able to pinpoint and quantify the problem. And after we quantify, we'll be able to solve it. As I was saying, traffic is everyone's expertise. Whatever I'm having in Surat, that if we have a population of 6 million people, but 6 million people are traffic engineers. Everyone will tell you, ye galat kar rahe ho. Whatever you do, someone will be there to tell you, ye wrong hai. लेकिन कब करना है, प्लानिंग कैसे करना है, क्यों करना है, वो कोई नहीं बता सकता है. So let us not worry about what negative results we'll be getting, negative reports we will be getting. Let us expect and accept some negative feedbacks, because they will be our guiding forces also. Even they are negative comments, we should be ready to face them and change our approach also for that. So that is how we are doing. We are already started the distribution. I think we will be within next week we'll be starting. First, we will give them some pilot projects. Let us say what the results they get back, their feedback, whether they are getting the results properly or not, or maybe we need to reformat our questions or questionnaire, maybe from the feedback. Some people, we are experts, we understand what we say, but the people at the ground level who are asking, like someone was asking, if you ask him what is their mode of how they travel, so what they like, some people walk, some people cycle, some people are using 2-3 modes per day. So this is how we have to understand. Maybe let us get the feedback from the pilot survey, and then we can modify, and then we can go for the whole in full force with the survey.
Sure, that's a very valid point. Pilot it, and that's exactly what we also did with the survey form. We piloted it not once, but 3 times in different parts of the country. with different set of respondents to get a better picture, and we refined the questionnaire through that. I'll move now to Ms. Himabindu from Guntur. Guntur is a city which is not under the Smart Cities mission, but that doesn't mean that Guntur is not smart, and it's been doing very good work. So Ms. Himabindu, from what I understand, Guntur benefits from nearly 4,000 volunteers who are available through the state government to conduct the survey. And it's not just the Transport for All, but recently you also conducted a very extensive COVID survey using these 4,000 volunteers. So please tell us about what is the system of volunteers that you have, and how was your experience with your previous COVID survey, because that might actually give a lot of feedback into how to conduct the Transport for All survey also.
Good afternoon all. Thank you, Shreya ma'am, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to Guntur city. Actually, we are conducting in-person surveys through volunteers. A volunteer for every 50 families is a new system introduced by Government of Andhra Pradesh for decentralized governance. They actually identify the problems faced by the persons in their jurisdiction and will bring it to the notice of concern so as to resolve the issues immediately. We have nearly around 4,000 volunteers, and they are paid by the government. So at present, we are utilizing their services, and they were actively involved in surveys like ration surveys and even fever surveys during this pandemic situation. So they are well versed with these kind of surveys, and they are well trained. Even they are selected through interviews and all. So while interview, they will be in interview. They means based on their skills and leadership qualities, they were selected. So for entire city of Guntur, we have 4,000 volunteers. For every 50 families, we have one volunteer.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, could you tell us how you train these volunteers for conducting surveys? And have you faced any problems with some surveyors? Have you had to change the surveyor, bring somebody else in their place because something was not working out?
Yeah, at present, we have involved only 50 volunteers. We have selected 50 volunteers at present because we have a very big number of volunteers. So we have trained them in online actually. And even in-person training also we have given. So we have trained them on this questionnaire, especially on this questionnaire. And we have converted this questionnaire in our local language also, so that the citizens and even the surveyors, means volunteers, can easily understand the questionnaire.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for that. I'll now move to Mr. Nagendra Reddy. Mr. Reddy, you have been managing a surveying and data analysis company for many years, and you've conducted surveys in multiple cities. What has your experience been in terms of ensuring good data quality?
Thank you very much, Shreya, and thank you very much, everyone, for having us on and giving us this platform and taking our suggestions and guidance. And yeah, thank you. And so coming back, I would like to tell you that, like, yes, Mr. Rajesh Pandey sir mentioned, it was a very good and right approach that because even being a private entity for a couple of projects, those which has got funding as well, but we still approach the educational institutions in order to consider, in order to come out with a good quality of the data, because as sir mentioned, PG students or engineering students who works on their academics, and it is very much necessary for them to understand, which help them for their project thesis purpose as well. And we do adopt the similar approach where we talk to the different institutions, and we also identify them based on the geographical. For example, if you take Bangalore, so each and every geography, like if you can split by different regions, there are multiple institutions spread across the city. So having coordinating and contacting the faculties, department heads, or there like one or two colleges, association with one or two colleges will give you the larger scale of spread across which can you can reach out the entire city actually. So that's how few, for example, as I know, like traffic department in Bangalore, they do follow the same approach in order to get this sort of surveys to be executed. And moreover, working with the students groups will also address you the funding issues as well. So where you may come out with issuing them some sort of participation letters or like experience letters, certificates, which and pay them like nominal amount where they incur the cost like the fuel or food expenses for the day. That will also help. This has been proven for us for many of the projects where we didn't have funds. And coming back to the quality of the data, which is very much crucial, and this starts, it requires a lot more things to be considered, starting from the picking up the surveyor or enumerator, because surveyor or enumerator is the key person who actually get us the data, and without enumerator, without a proper knowledge and proper understanding of the purpose or objective of the mission, so we will end up like getting the bad data, bad quality data. So it requires like identifying the right person, right enumerator, and proper orientation to be given to the team, with maybe if possible face to face. I do understand the COVID situation, but I do recommend if cities can manage to gather, it's a small group of people, 10 to 15 people, we can follow the COVID guidelines and some orientation given, and it should by the pilot drill. As Mr. Pandey sir mentioned, it is very much required in order to understand the evaluate the enumerator or surveyor, as well as the understanding the ground challenges when they go out on the field. So what the response comes from the respondents, are they really supportive? And meanwhile, they also try to judge the person, so whom to approach. And it also matters that like in order to get the good number of samples, like your physical attire also very much important when you do the public transport surveys, which comes out of our experience. And I also recommend to give out some sort of identification, ID cards or as such, to the surveyors or respondents, because our experience says if some new face coming details, so it's like if it is a person coming out with a proper ID card, probably with the students with engineering background, as well as having some sort of temporary ID card from the smart city, keep respondents in comfort zone, and they'll try to engage and give more information. That's one more suggestion. Probably this sort of things they'll come out facing during their pilot session. And what else? Okay. So I also suggest to have around 10% of buffer to consider. That's how we do 10% of buffer. For example, you have 3,000 surveys as a sample target, but I suggest to have like 10% additional on top of it, where it always happens when you complete the survey and you go for data cleaning and all those things, you end up eliminating a lot of inconsistent responses that you incur, half completed, all those things. So this also will ensure that good quality of data will come in as an output.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Nagin Reddy, for that. I'll now move over to Mr. Rajesh Pandya again. Mr. Pandya, now Surat obviously has people of different income categories. What is the system that you're planning to use to ensure that you get a good spread of respondents in the city?
I think we are targeting 2-3 different sectors. One is age group, sex, income, and all those things. So as you are aware that in most of the cities, we have certain sectors where you'll find HID, some sectors you'll find LIG, and some sectors you'll find MIG. So first of all, we are planning to have even distribution. First, we are trying to have a demographic distribution. I will say not the spatial distribution. And we'll try to find out whether we are missing some sector. In some sectors, we may find don't have some HIG groups or only LIG groups. Then after that, if there is some missing groups, we'll have to analyze our survey data. Whenever we get it daily, we have to analyze and see which sector we are lagging. Then we'll have to improve, or we'll have to concentrate more on that sector. Suppose we are getting less data from the LIG group, then we'll have to target in certain sectors or areas where the LIG groups are more. But I will try to refrain from targeting particular areas initially. So let us not shortlist or identify certain areas. Otherwise, our data may be skewed or targeted or biased. If I say, let me go for Piploth area and try to get 500 data, and if I get 500 data Piploth of EWS, then I'll not go to other area. Then my area may be, my data may be biased. It will be skewed data. So
That's
first, let me concentrate spatially. I'll have to concentrate all the areas equally. And in certain areas, if I don't get certain sectors, then I have to find those sectors in that area itself. And if I don't get, suppose it is within some industrial area, large industrial area, I may not have affluent class people. So then I can avoid that and try to make up from data from other areas. So as you were saying, see, as I think Nagendra was also very much correct, we should have good quantity of data. Number of data should be sufficient. But with quantity, we should also be very particular about the quality of data. If we rush our surveyors, आज हर किसी को दिन में 15 लेके आना है, or you do this within 3 days or 5 days, or you do it fast, or if they are not trained well, we'll have to first warm up. Slowly they understand, then they get the grasp of the things, then we can increase the pace. But if we rush our surveyors, and if the surveyor's quality itself is poor, then the result will be of poor quality. And a poor quality data, see, this is going to be a data, this is the base of our future work. And if our base is not of good quality, then we can understand what our output will be. So let us be very serious in the survey. It is not to be taken very lightly. It is going to be the complete base of our planning, execution, and results. And the results that we'll get will be comparing with the base data again. So the quality of the data or the survey is going to be very important. We should be very particular about that. Even if we have to give more time, just I'm not suggesting it now that we let us get more time. Otherwise, everyone has a mindset, okay, zyada din milne wala hai. But even if we have to compromise with giving more time for survey, let us do it at the end. But we have to be very particular about the quality of the data that we get.
Thank you so much for highlighting the need for quality of data, because I cannot emphasize that enough. If you have garbage in, you will get garbage out. That's as simple as that. And if you are really keen and committed, and I'm sure you're keen and committed towards making your city the best in public transport, you will need very high quality data to start with to be able to make those decisions. I'll now again go back to Ms. Himabindu. You had conducted, like I mentioned earlier, also with these volunteers, COVID surveys, which also brings to the question or forefront, how do you make sure that the surveyors and the respondents are safe from COVID? So these are special times, these are not normal times, and we want to ensure that this survey is done in as safe a manner as can be. So can you please share with us what are the steps that you're taking? Ms. Himabindu?
Yes, actually, we are giving regular trainings regarding this social distancing and wearing of masks and even using sanitizers and all. While going for housing survey, they will be making sure that they will be wearing mask and they will maintain distance, and they will be conducting these surveys.
Okay. Is there anything else that you're doing to maintain COVID safety?
been we are using this digital equipments of only with the cell phones we are using now. Means there is no pamphlet distribution of pamphlets and all. We are not.
That's right.
Encouraging.
Yeah, which is again a point I'd like to emphasize. Please do not use paper forms. Instead, use the digital form. And there are two reasons for this. One is that you'll get digital data that you can immediately use, but it also reduces the potential problems of gathering information with paper, with analog forms. So please ensure that your surveyors have a phone or a tablet that they can use for conducting the survey. Mr. Nagendra Reddy, I'll come back to you now. Now, have you faced challenges while conducting surveys, either presently in COVID times or in the past? What kind of challenges have you come across, and how have you overcome these challenges? Mr. Reddy?
Hello.
Yes.
Audible?
Yeah, I think yes.
Oh, he's in mute.
Sorry, you
Yeah.
seem to be
Sorry.
stuck. Yes.
Shreya, yes, we did. We did take up like a couple of projects during the pandemic for the public transport here in Bangalore, which was like late like around November, December last month. And as you mentioned, like we did had like a lot of challenges in terms of reaching out people, and people were respondents were like not so cooperative as such, which though we have maintained proper following the proper guidelines, having face mask and having gloves and following all the guidelines, which we actually we ended up like little stretching out the timeline that we have got during this period, and at the same time we went up on the kind of high visibility areas and having some sort of setting up some small kiosks, kind of with some sort of branding activity. For example, Bangalore Smart City having a small kiosk and keeping markings with social distancing, where which also encourages people to participate as well. So especially this really worked for us in the high income groups where we couldn't really it is not so easy to get the household break the gate and get into the house high income group communities. So where we came up with this sort of small kiosk having a place nearby parking where people come out for jogging or walking. So we did really found like a very good response, and where we were able to achieve the target sample for that income group level actually.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Now I'd like to open this discussion to all the participants who are there. We have over 150 participants, and some of you have already posed questions. I'd like to present those questions to our panelists. You know, one of the questions that has come up is that there are a few people who understand the need to move to public transport. This is the most upvoted question. And in the event like these, we see that mostly these people participate. But I'm worried that many times we don't see people who do not understand this need and are not moving towards it. What do we do? What we have to do if we want to expand this group? Now, from what I understand, the question is, how do you expand the number of people who embrace public transport? But I do want to point out one thing before I present this question to also our panelists, that the purpose of the survey is not to convince people to use public transport. It's a separate exercise to have a communications campaign to build support for public transport. Right now, the main question is to understand where people are. It is not to bias them, not to convince them, but to understand the problems that they face, whether or not they are using public transport. So those who are using public transport might have a certain set of problems that they face. Those who do not use public transport might have their own concerns. And our goal is to find out what those concerns are to be able to find solutions for it. But I'd also like to present this question to Mr. Rajesh Pandya and Ms. Himabindu, if you have any suggestions regarding this.
When we want to move to some direction or any destination, there are a number of routes we can take. But it depends upon the person who's traveling, which routes he takes.
Sure.
So generally, he'll take any route where he, to ask a person to take one route, there are two ways. Either you encourage him to take a particular route, or you discourage him to take some XYZ route. So here we can have, should have number of, see, there are number of options, number of actions we can take. First is encouraging public transport. So you have to facilitate, improve public transport. I see the paradigm is that we are asking people to take public transport, but I'm very sorry to say we are not able to provide good quality public transport. So the first step will be to provide good quality public transport. That is encouraging public transport. And other way is discourage private transport or propose such difficulties that people say, oh, yaar, gaadi leke jayenge to park kahan karenge? Don't allow free parking. Parking, we think allowing parking, we are reducing congestion. No. So we have to take different number of steps. There cannot be 1, 2, or 5 steps. There are n number of steps that we will have to take to encourage people or move people to public transport to increase this group. And that will be one. If I take in one large group, encourage, improve, facilitate public transport, and slowly, don't rush. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of opposition. Slowly try to discourage private transport, discourage people from bringing the private vehicles, like congestion tax, high parking charges, other things that the experts are suggesting. So that is one way, or I think that is the main way we will have to improve the public transport.
Sure. The next question that's been upvoted is from Ms. Indrajit Kaur, and the question is, how can we generalize a specific area according to income group? So this also comes back to the question of how do you do sampling? How do you ensure that you have a good spread of various income groups spatially across the whole city, and different genders and ages also covered in this? So any one of you, the panelists, Mr. Pandya, Ms. Himabindu, or Mr. Reddy, you're welcome to answer this question.
If no one is taking this question, let me answer. Let us keep away from falling into this trap. We should not generalize a specific area with the income group. Let us not be biased in the starting itself. I understand that in UT and Delhi, you won't find EWS groups, but it is a very inductive way of going. So we should not try to keep away from this generalizing areas with specific income groups. Yes, there will be areas with some industrial areas. You will always find low income groups or medium income groups. You won't find higher income groups. But generalizing areas with income groups is not a proper surveying process or method. That is my suggestion. I think Nagendra will be better judge for this question.
Sure. Nagendra, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, sir. I do agree with that. So we do experience a couple of issues in generalizing. So sometimes we may find out a geographical particular location where we'll have like mixed income groups, as at the same time few geographical locations like which is not really mixed. But especially with surveys, something related to the public transport or something like social cause, doing it for the citizens. So we do had some sort of issue in arriving in the sample sizes, reaching out, like kind of get hold of the respondents as well. So I do agree with what Rajesh Pandey sir said, and I think we should at least for this particular program, Transport for All. So we shouldn't be doing that differentiating, which may not really work for all these cities. It may work for few cities, but may not work for all the cities.
Sure, sure. Ms. Simabindu, do you have anything to add?
Even we are also following means this sampling and all. We are concentrating on this age groups and this gender, and we are not concentrating on practically means on this social income group. Automatically, I think it will come.
Yeah. So I'd like to just add here that, see, the point is that you do want to get a good spread of income groups, but keep in mind that many areas and within Indian cities don't tend to be mono income group. So there is a mix of different income groups. What you need to identify is the household type. The best proxy that we can think of right now is the kind of house a family is living in as a proxy for their income category. And that's why in the presentation previously, I had shown that you have these three different principal typologies, if you will, of low income, middle income, and high income in terms of the house that people live in. And you could use that as a means of sort of identifying at least that they might belong to a certain income category. But keep in mind that in the same area of a city, you might actually find all the three income types. And what you do not want to do, as in what you want to do is to cover all these kinds, but what you do not want to do is to cover only one part of the city with all the typologies. Like Mr. Pandya had said, do not try to get all the 500 samples from just one area of the city. You want to have a good spread of these samples from across the city. So you want to get low income samples from across the city, middle income samples from across the city, and high income samples from across the city. Similarly, men and women in each of these income categories, and people of different ages in each of these income categories. I hope that answers the question. There was one question about, can we add questions to the existing template? The answer is yes. You can add some questions at the end, but a humble request to you, please do not change the existing questions. You might want to consider changing the wording a little bit in the translation in case of one translation that is not connecting, but the content of the question itself, please do not change of the existing questionnaire. And last, there's a question about, there's a pretty long question from Shashanka Pulipati. Maybe we can take that offline right now. Any final words from any of our panelists today? What do you see both in this survey, but also from Transport4All? So maybe I'll start with Ms. Himabindu, then go to Mr. Nagarjun Reddy, and final words from Mr. Rajesh Pandya before we close the session with final remarks from Mr. Rahul Kapoor. Ms. Himabindu, over to you.
Pardon?
So any final words about either the citizen survey or about the Transport4All challenge from you and Guntur?
Actually, this active participation of task force team members is very much crucial. What I found is, and even planning in advance and preparation for these surveys and all makes a crucial role in successful completion of this Transport4All challenge.
Sure. One of the participants has highlighted that a highly voted question is about the budget. The question is, being a pandemic period, engaging volunteers or students is not that easy. And if budget is more, it will be easier to engage. What can be taken into account? How much government pays for identified 4,000 volunteers in Guntur? And similarly, maybe you could say that for also Surat.
In Guntur, not only in Guntur, for all over the Andhra Pradesh, they are paying around 5,000 rupees per volunteer per month.
Okay.
It's a government project, and their government itself is paying for that.
Sure. Thanks. Mr. Pandya, what you, from what I understand, you engage with academic institutions, but is there any budget that you're spending from Surat Municipal Corporation to facilitate this?
Actually, no one has asked for it yet, and we don't think it is going to, because we have made it as a part of their project work. So they will be actually, whenever these students are doing such surveys or such projects, they have to spend something. So in fact, they are saving. So the saving for the survey for their project is what they'll be getting as a remuneration for this. And anyway, it is a project work. It is, I don't think, as you said, much larger number is required. And we are getting good number of volunteers who are still, other than these student academic groups, other NGOs who are actively working, like some Mahila group, Mahila Seva group, they are actively contacting us that they'll like to assist in this survey. So
Sure.
I don't think funding is going to be, but if this is the funding, then we can always manage it from our municipal accounts also.
Sure.
That is not an issue.
Thanks. And maybe Mr. Reddy, you could say normally what do you end up spending on surveyors, just to give a sense to the cities. Nagendra Reddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
As in, since you've been conducting surveys for many years, as in what kind of remuneration or honorarium do you give to surveyors or volunteers who do the survey for you?
Yeah. So just before that, like I would like to give my opinion on what Mr. Raj Pandey sir has mentioned. I don't think that since we are looking at for only around about 10 to 15 volunteers, and considering the number of institutions that we have in any city, and at the same time, apart of cities, I think there must be many other non-profits or NGOs who would be really happy to be participated and be supporting towards this particular program. The kind of quantum of support that this particular program is getting. I think identifying surveyors or enumerators for a city around 10 to 15, I think it shouldn't be a big task, even though considering the pandemic situation. And coming back to the pay that we can consider for this is like, as you mentioned earlier during your initial presentation. So 500 rupees per respondent in a day is a good decent thing where they can really consider giving out for these surveys. Even if it is student groups also, I think that gives some sort of little motivation to them at the, where they can take care of their expenses, food or fuel expenses during the survey duration, or like the days that they spend across.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. I'd like to just reiterate to all the cities, the money that you will be spending on this survey is a minuscule component of the benefit that you will get out of it. But without actually doing a good quality survey, you will not be able to go forward in making your city a public transport haven, a place जहाँ पे आपको सभी को सार्वजनिक यातायात की सुविधा प्रदान हो, ये आप नहीं कर पाएंगे। तो आप सभी से गुजारिश है कि आप इसे एक बहुत बड़ा एक्सपेंस न समझें, और प्लीज do a high quality survey so that you can get the information that you require to be able to develop solutions that you require. So with that, we come to an end of this session. Thanks a lot to all the panelists, and over to you, Mr. Rahul Kapoor. But before you, if Mr. Kunal Kumar, if he's there, and Mr. Ravi Prakash, if you have anything to add to today's session, please do. Otherwise, over to you, Mr. Rahul Kapoor, for your final words. And we've also launched a poll on what you think about today's session. So please do vote.
Okay, I think I will give my closing remarks then.
Sure.
A very interesting discussion, definitely. Second workshop in the series. And as we are all doing so many challenges, basically to address the urban challenges. So I think that's a very good way to caption this. But I think some of the points that were discussed today, and we are really at the beginning of this challenge when you're talking about. And idea is that we have to be very clear. What is the objective of all these surveys that we were discussing today? And the objective is basically to understand what is the perception of the citizen today with regard to public transport, and what is it that, what are the niggles that they're really facing do they really want public transport? I mean, many a times you might get that kind of a response also, that we would be very happy with our own personal vehicles or whatever mode that we're using in our cities. And maybe that is a perception that we would like to change. But if that is a problem, then that is something that needs to come out in these surveys that we are conducting. So how do you conduct those surveys? What kind of sample mix you need to carry? And all those issues that would go into designing a good survey questionnaire is something that we discussed today. And these are the points that you need to ponder and go back and sit with your team, sit with your task force members, and finally come out as something that will help you understand what are the real challenges that you would face with regard to improving the public transport in your city. The second important point with regard to data. And when we are talking about a technology and innovation challenge, the technology interventions that we would be implementing would very much depend on a very robust data ecosystem. And there are initiatives that the cities are undertaking. And the idea is to align all these initiatives, be it the data smart city strategy, the data maturity assessment framework, when we are trying to create a strong and robust data ecosystem in our cities, and how that will basically be the platform that will enable these challenges to succeed, and how it will basically feed back into that ecosystem of data that we're trying to build. So that is very important. So going back, just look at the way you are going to improve the data ecosystem, the kind of data that you would want to collect for taking this challenge forward. The issue of funding was also discussed, and with regard to the challenges that many of the cities are facing. So very frankly, I think either ways you would be spending on trying to understand the perception of citizens with regard to public transport, either through this program or through any other program. So don't think of this program as something which is happening independent of the existing challenges or existing projects that you're undertaking in your city. It is basically very strongly linked to your other public transport projects. Try and build those synergies, and you will automatically come out with various sources of funds that will help you finance these kind of initiatives, because the learnings from these surveys, these interventions that you are going to pilot, test, and after that scale, would basically feed back into all those projects that you would have probably conceptualized or are already running parallelly in your city. With that, I'll not take too much time. One request, please, all those cities that have not formed a task force till date, kindly do so, as has already been pointed out by one of the panelists, that how these task force have been very helpful in basically helping them understand the overall context of the problem in their cities. And basically getting those experts in your panel or in your task force would be very, very helpful to you. So kindly engage with them. And I have a very deep-hearted request to all the stakeholders from the academic institutions, from the industry and startups who would be eventually be participating at a later stage. All the city NGOs and all the individuals who are really passionate about the subject, please partner with the cities, and city officials should also reach out to such individuals and build the kind of relationships that would make this a really, really successful program. And like I said, a challenge to basically solve all the urban challenges, and that's the objective of India Transport for All. Thank you very much, and I look forward to more such engagements in the subsequent workshop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rahul Kapoor. And with that, we come to an end of the session. The recording of this would be available on video, as in we will share this video with you all. And please do share it with others who might have missed. I'd like to thank my entire team, Faraz Ahmed, who was there as the anchor for today's session, but also Ms. Vaishali Singh, Mr. Shiva, Sampath Kumar from the SCM Mahua team, also other team members of ours, Smriti, who's been a key part of the program, Aishwarya, who's been a key part of the program, and many other colleagues of mine who are anchoring this, who are available and to help you in whatever questions you might have. So please reach out to us either on the WhatsApp group that you are on, or at the email address that you know, which is contact@transport4all.in. And we're available at all times to be of support to you, and wishing you all the best in doing a fantastic, in your fantastic participation in this challenge and in improving public transport for all in your city. So thanks a lot. And once again, thanks a lot, Mr. Kunal Kumar and Mr. Ravi Prakash, for joining us at the start of the session and for your great words of inspiration to the cities. and to all the participants who've stayed on till now. Thank you.
Thank you to all members of MOUA and ITDP. Thank you.
Thank you.
so much, Shreya.
Very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you, Shreya. So with that, we are at a wrap, and we can end the webinar now.